I like the shirt. So first thing I'm going to do is not color in, but I'm just going to outline this big triangle that we get on the side. Well, otherwise it's not a triangle, it's a trapezoid, and that's going to affect our calculation. So let's just pretend that it does. It can actually start further up, but it can't start here on the x-axis. Then we'd run into issues. So. What this triangle represents is called the total welfare of the economy, and I'll give you a definition of that in a second. Total welfare of an economy. And I'm going to shade in the top half of that big triangle. The top half is called consumer surplus. Again, I'll give you a definition in a second. Consumer surplus. And I'm going to shade in a different color the bottom half of the triangle. Anyone want to guess what the bottom's called? Consumer surplus. Suppliers or producer surplus, you got it. Producer or supplier. Producer's surplus. We don't need to talk about the triangle that's formed on the right-hand side because these points are unattainable. Why could we not have a point that's way over here, for example? Right, there's no line means we don't have the resources to supply that part. So we're only going to look here because we can undersupply, we just can't oversupply something. Okay, so 3 definitions. Consumer surplus, so that's the top of the total welfare triangle. It's the benefit enjoyed by consumers who are willing to pay a higher price for a good. I'm going to let you write that down in a second, just let me repeat it. The benefit enjoyed by consumers willing to pay a higher price for a good. Okay, so let's write it, then I'll talk about it on the graph. So the benefit enjoyed by consumers who are willing to pay the benefit enjoyed by consumers who are willing to pay a higher price for a good. I want you to picture something that you really, really, really want for your next birthday. So what's the #1 item on your list if you had to make a list right now? Money. It was kind of a rhetorical question, but nonetheless. And let's say you got money instead for your birthday so you could go and buy whatever that item is. You might be willing to pay a price that's way up here because you really, really want this item. You might be willing to pay a price that's up here, but because the market is in equilibrium, you only have to pay the price down here. That's called consumer surplus. You have surplus money because you didn't have to pay the higher price. That's why it's above the equilibrium line. Okay, so consumer surplus is the extra money you have because you didn't have to pay a higher price. Okay. Producer surplus. Anybody want to guess on a definition or try to word one from that one? What do you think it might start with? Yes. Ooh, good guess. Not quite. Okay, so benefit enjoyed by producers. who are willing to sell their good at a lower price. The benefit enjoyed by producers who are willing to sell their good at a lower price. So we have to take off our shopping hat, put on our producing hat. Imagine we're the people that are at the market doing the selling. We might be willing to take $1 or $2 or $3 for a particular product, but because the equilibrium is way up here, we don't have to. So we get more income, which means we have a producer surplus. So this area here, good for producers. This area here, good for consumers. Total together is good for the total economy. Okay, so it's called total welfare of the economy because it's good for both. This is good for consumers, this is good for producers. So total welfare is the sum of consumer and producer surplus. Line is irrelevant in terms of the area of the triangle, which I'll show you in a second when we do the calculation. So irrelevant to what we're talking about today. Well, not quite, because I'm about to put down, this is maximized at the equilibrium. Kind of, yeah. I spell it with an I.
Oh, I thought it was spelled with an A.
No, equilibrium.
I get it.
So what that means, if we go back and look at the diagram, we know that things cause supply to shift and demand to shift. Sometimes it's changes in price, sometimes it's all those other determinants we looked at. So what happens is the market goes in and out of equilibrium. So I want you to just look at the shaded pink region for now. Well, let's say I made the price way up here. Now look at the area of the shaded pink region. Is it smaller or is it larger? It's obviously smaller. Okay, what if the same thing I change price for supply and it ends up way over here? What's the area of the blue region? Smaller than if it's at equilibrium. That's what this means, is that the biggest area you're going to get, so the biggest welfare, that means it's the best for both consumers and producers, is at equilibrium. Okay, the minute we start shifting out of equilibrium, somebody's not going to gain as much benefit. Okay, so what we're going to do today is practice, well, how do we calculate this? How do we get a numeric value for consumer surplus? How do we get a numeric value for producer surplus? So what it comes down to is just the area of those two triangles. What is the basic general math formula for area of a triangle? Agree? That's from like grade 6. Okay, so flipping back to our diagram, I turn the sheet over instead of flipping it. The base of the triangle is going to be this distance here. Doesn't matter if we're talking about the triangle above or the triangle below. Well, what is the same as this distance? Well, it's the same on the x-axis, and what do we call this point right here? Quantity of equilibrium. So that's always going to be the base of the two triangles, is the quantity of equilibrium. Well, what you're going to have way up here is, we'll call it P1, and that's going to represent the price when the quantity demanded is 0, and then we're going to put a point down here and call it P2, and that's going to represent the price when the quantity supplied is 0. And so how do I calculate the distance between here and here? Oh, you're thinking way outside the box. I would need two other sides to do Pythagorean theorem. How do I just calculate a distance? P1 minus PE. So I would just subtract to find out how many units is there. And how would I find the distance down here if I'm dealing with the producer surplus? So going back to just our formula for a triangle, we can say that consumer surplus equals, the base is always equal to QE. The height we just said was P1 minus PE. Right, base times height. And then we have to divide by 2. Producer surplus, base is still QE. How do we find the height of the triangle? We called it P2 just because it was the second point. And we need to divide by 2. So although the formulas look confusing because there's all these variables, it's just area of the triangle. That's all it comes down to. How do we calculate what's called the total welfare? Well, we add them together. So we take PS, or CS, sorry, plus PS. Yes, but they're going to want you to calculate them separately. Don't be all Asian on us, come on. So for those who are into formulas, let's look at a question with actual numbers. Okay, so this happens to be the market for bread. They've got the supply, demand, the price. They're showing what's happening if they increase the price, decrease the price. So basically there's 3 values you need to find. You need to find what's called the base of the triangles, or what's the quantity at the equilibrium. What's the quantity at equilibrium? Not a trick question, it's right on the graph. No, it's not. It's a quantity, not a price. 10. So we know that this side of the triangle is 10. We're going to have to find the distance from the equilibrium price to the higher price because that's the height of the triangle. So how do we find that? We subtract. If we were at 2 and we went to 5, how many units did we move up? 5 minus 2? 3. The third side we're going to need to find is the decrease in price. So if we were at 2 and we went down to 0.5, how much did we drop the price? 1.5. That's what the formula is getting you to do, is just calculate those 3 things.
That graph is not to scale.
No, no graphs are to scale in economics. It's wishy-washy social science.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so consumer surplus is the base of the triangle, which is 10, times the height of the triangle, which is 3, and divide by 2. Okay, if you didn't want to do all that work, you could just plug all the numbers into the formula. We'll give you the exact same. It's always in dollars, so our consumer surplus is $15. That's the maximum amount of extra money we're going to have that we would have been willing to pay, but we didn't have to. So we had to pay $2 a loaf, a bag, whatever the bread is, but we could have paid and saved up to $15. Producer surplus is the bottom of the triangle, so how much do producers get to keep because they didn't sell at a lower price? Base is 10, height is 1.5, divide by 2. Offer of $7.50. Okay, so that's all the total money that the producers got to keep because they didn't have to sell it at a lower rate. And then the question asks for total welfare. So in everybody in the economy, how much did producers get to enjoy? How much did consumers get to enjoy? What do we do with the 2 numbers? Add them together. What's the total welfare of the economy? $22.50. That's it. The math involved is like grade 5. Questions so far? Turn to someone in front, behind, beside you. Do this one together. Same thing. Find me customer surplus, producer surplus, and total welfare. It works better for you. So if we look at the bottom of both triangles, what's the value?
20.
More specifically, 20 million, right? Okay. What's the price change for the consumers? Agree? Price change for producers? Okay, so consumer surplus is going to be the 20 million times the 15 million divided by 2 gave us million. What about producer surplus? Exactly the same. Total welfare? 300,
Oh, okay, yeah, it was right.
but 300
Dollars. Million.
million. That's a lot of money.
Nah.
When a market is in equilibrium, it is said to be in a state of allocative efficiency. Fancy, fancy word. Allocative efficiency. What does that mean? Resources are allocated in the most efficient way from society's point of view. Equilibrium, good. Disequilibrium,